Start it. Do this shit.
Welcome to Champion Your Culture, the podcast, a weekly live show where we explore the power of culture and leadership in business. I'm Ryan McCarty.
And I'm George Rogers, and we go live every week to learn from each other and hear from other experts about how to effectively champion our team members and ourselves. So join us live every Wednesday on our social networks or subscribe. You can listen to Apple, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. Now, let's champion your culture.
What's up, George? I put this around there. Sorry about that.
Double take.
You would think after doing this, what is this, like our 36th time doing this? Like we should probably have this good by now.
You know, I think it's great that we don't have it right, because then we wouldn't have anything to look for in the future. Like, you know, there's always something we got to get better at. And so, you know, it's one of those things. Podcasting, for ladies and gentlemen, anybody out there that is inspiring or expiring to podcasts, one of the things I learned, podcast is really like golf. Like, there are 30 things that could go wrong in a golf swing, just one little golf swing. And it's the same with podcasts. There's literally 30 things that can go wrong in a podcast. Like, you know, the microphone's not working, or the internet's not working. Or for me, I had this inspiring, or who should be expiring, drummer next door to my office. And he just loves to beat on the drums at weird times. It could be 5 o'clock in the morning. That's fine. I'm going out for a run. It could be right now during the podcast, as if he knows my schedule and my calls. And it's like, bro, I want to go over and knock on his door and, you know, act like I'm a pastor again, lay hands on him, like 5 knuckle shuffle, any of those things, to make sure he's part of the culture fit. You see that plug?
Totally,
you like
that? He's not fitting into our culture here at Champion Your Culture, is he?
But hey, welcome everybody to Champion Your Culture podcast with myself and Ryan McCarty, sponsored by Culture of Good. We appreciate Culture of Good and their support behind this podcast, and as well as everybody out there today that's watching live, whether you're watching on any social media platform or you're listening to us on your podcast platform. We appreciate you, and we want to ask you right now, if you have not, like, subscribe, share this podcast if you find the content and me and Ryan to be relevant and inspiring, or maybe give you some joy, or say, hey, there's somebody else that has it worse than me. Whatever it may be, we will love for you to share this podcast. Man.
I really hope we bring people joy. I hope people enjoy when they get on and they feel, like you said, inspired. That is the word, right? We get inspired before we expire. Right? Like, we have to make sure that we're really in this. So it is good to see everybody on with us today. Please do share. We love to spread this message of how to champion culture in a way that really impacts not only the workplace, but also the world. How are we really having an influence through our work and through our life, you know? And so many employees are looking for that. So it's good to be on and feel like actually we're having an impact, George. So that's an awesome thing every single week with you, bro.
Yeah, I'm having fun. This is it's a highlight of my week. I'm always looking forward to it. And so, you know, you never know what's going to happen. I think I look forward to it because I never know where the conversation is going to go. Like we discuss, we have some strategy behind everything. We plan this out a few days ahead of time and kind of say, hey, where do we want to go with this? And what do we really want to give to the audience, and make sure that, one, it's meaningful, because people are giving us their time. But when we get on here, sometimes, man, we get so passionate, and or the conversation sometimes leads in a different direction. And it's those moments that I really love the most, because even in preparation, there's some insight that just comes out, whether it's through a question from our audience, and feel free, everybody that's watching right now live, to chime in, jump into the chat. If you want to ask any question on the topic, around the topic, all things cultural leadership, D&I, that's, you know, things that me and Ryan are both passionate about. So, but yeah, I'm excited, man, because I always feel like there's something that's outside of what we discuss that comes out of these things that really challenge me and gives me that energy for the rest of the week.
Yeah, man. I know last week we were really big on really considering the ideas again around culture fit versus culture add. And we started talking about how important it is, and dove right into more of a DEI conversation, going beyond DEI really to building a culture of belonging and creating space for people to be themselves. And that's why we're really am excited about diving into this, because it really leads into the idea that if we're building and championing our team, we have to understand what kind of team are we actually building, right? Like, are we building a team that's going to grow for the sake of growth? Are we building a team also for the sake of enhancing the team, right? Are we hiring a culture enhancer? I love that idea, more than just a culture add, a culture enhancer. And last week you talked about a culture force, right? Is it a culture force or a culture enhance? And I think that changes the concept from culture fit and culture add to something, just a new concept, right? Like, is this person going to enhance our culture, or are we just hiring them because they're just like everybody else, right? And we know it's just going to be an easy transition. You know, they're going to get off. They're going to want to get off at the same time as everybody else. They're the same age as everybody. You know how it all works. You know, then you hire somebody that's completely different. You realize, you know, maybe they just don't fit at all. A lot of times it's because we're not prepared to build a culture that's enhancing itself as we're hiring new people. But I don't want to get too far deep into it just yet. I'm excited about it, man. So.
Yeah, you know, there's so many things. I actually had the opportunity. I'm looking forward to a conversation in the future. I met about a week ago, and it actually started, you know, in January. I had an opportunity, Ryan, to speak here in Nashville for a group of women. It was Advancing Women in Technology here in Nashville. Great opportunity for women in technology really to grow their brand and speak on that, and obviously bringing our leadership and self-leadership to that conversation as part of a panel with some other great speakers. And I met a lady who worked with Lindsay worked with WorkZynga. So and got to meet Dan, the owner. And so their company, WorkZynga, and it's kind of interesting because I met Dan last week as we're talking about culture fit versus culture add. And so shout out to those guys and the team over there. WorkZynga is actually doing some great things. I'm excited about that. And I'm interested in bringing Dan on our podcast. So they do a culture fit assessment, right?
Yeah.
And so I want to make sure people understand, because as we're talking about these things, Ryan, I think the power of a word or words in general, they have power, right? They're life and death. They're positive and negative. They bring energy. They bring motivation, or they demotivate you. You know, they lift you up, or they, you demote you in a sense of energy, you know, positivity, whatever it may be. But as we're talking about culture fitting, you spoke really well on this last week. It's a word. At the end of the day, fitting is a word. What we mean by fitting is forcing, right? When I say I'm fitting something, culture fit, as we're talking about this, in relation to what I was describing with culture fit with WorkZynga, there's a difference there. And one of the things Dan and I were discussing, the founder, was understanding the language, right? I can say, Ryan, I love you, and I can mean 5 different things, right? Love has 5 different, ways and routes.
Tell me what you mean then, George. Don't just say you love me, man. Tell me what you mean
I
by
filio you, man. I brotherly love you. No euro,
You're getting into the Greek now. You got that agape phileo love, bro.
The phileo, man. Which is where brotherly love, Philadelphia, all that stuff comes from. There's root to the words, is what I'm saying. And so as people, as we're discussing these things, understand the intent of what we're saying and don't get lost into just a word. Understand what we mean behind that word. When we say culture fit, that means, hey, George, you're going to join this company. We're going to force you to fit what we want it to be, versus how do we fit together, right? How do I add value? How can George be George within the company and the vision, the mission, and the core values? How do we align together? How do we fit together? And so I wanted to mention WorkZynga because I'm interested in that. I'm interested in the future, Ryan. We should bring Dan on to discuss that, because I think that's in alignment with what we're talking about.
I love those kind of assessments, and certainly culture fit assessments aren't going to be far different from a culture add assessment, right? Because what we're looking for is, when we're hiring, is there cohesion in terms of that person's set of values and the values of the company? The vision, the mission, does that resonate with that employee? That's what we're talking about, like with WorkZynga when they're saying culture fit. But the terminology of the forcing. And that's really what, to your point, what we're saying is don't hire a culture don't just force somebody in because they seem like, they're going to fit in with everybody else. Because a lot of times that feels forced, right? And it feels very natural at first because, we get so used to in business ourselves. And certainly there's recruiters on with us on this podcast. We want to welcome everybody that's in the HR space. We have a funny little segment called the craziest shit in HR that will kick off here shortly. But really, all of us, including those that are doing the recruiting, we have felt what it feels like to be recruited, right? Like we know what that feels like. And so many times we know that the company that's hiring us isn't being as forthcoming with what the full scope of the job could potentially be. What does work-life balance look like? I kind of liken it to the billboard you see on the side of the highway, as you're driving, closer to anywhere where there's slot machines. What am I trying to say? Like where do they have slot machines and shit? George, help me out here.
Oh, you talking about the casino, man? I know all about those.
At a casino, yeah. Sorry, the word wasn't coming to mind. So the billboard, the casino's got shit all over it. There's somebody's going to win a Mercedes, and there's money flying everywhere, and it's young people, and they all look happy. And then you walk in to the casino, and people are on oxygen, and they're sucking down a cig, and it just half the people look depressed, and they're just like ching, ching, ching. But if you put that on the billboard, people wouldn't show up. And sometimes, as recruiters and as those that are in the hiring process, we tend to not be as forthcoming with what the actual culture is like, right? And how that person can actually enhance. And so we're constantly trying to pitch our company to get someone to want to work for us. And in doing so, a lot of times that person that's being recruited is also thinking, well, how am I going to fit into this, right? Yeah. And so many times that doesn't feel as forced at first, but over time, we start to realize that if people can't fully be themselves, then we're creating a culture of sameness. And a culture of sameness is a culture that is a sure future of failing and not success. If we have a culture of sameness, then we don't have the ability to think uniquely and creatively. We don't have different perspectives and life experiences and cultural understandings and knowledge and abilities that other people that may be older than us, younger than us, I mean, ageism is a huge thing, It didn't take long for Simon Sinek to get famous for saying that millennials were a bunch of entitled brats at work, right? And what we had is an older person dogging young people. And now we got young people that are saying, well, we've got this startup with a bunch of 30-year-olds that are on fire. Why would we ever hire somebody in their 50s? And yet someone in their 50s may bring a different perspective to that team that business and that company needs, but will never do that because the problem is that sometimes feels more forced in the beginning than a culture fit does. Sometimes a culture fit feels very natural because that person's just like everybody else, vibes with the same thing. We don't know what they're faking either, right? We don't know how they're fully showing up. They may be fitting in and forcing themselves into that culture. And so we have to be really conscious of the early stages of what is this person going to bring that will enhance the culture of our team. That's what we're looking for in a culture ad. We're looking for a culture enhancer. Somebody that's going to enhance, right, the culture. It's me adding conditioner to my shampoo regimen after like 46 years and realize that, ooh, my locks are soft now. That's an enhancement, right? Like it's an enhance. So how is this person going to be enhancing our team? And being able to quantify that over time is really crucial, to know that each person is able to creatively bring themselves and bring their uniqueness to a team and contribute in ways that other people aren't contributing, right? I mean, that's really what a team is going to be. Not everybody's going to be LeBron James. Not everybody's going to be the center on a team. We can't have everybody 7 foot, right? If we thought, well, we just want a team of 7-footers, that's a whole different scope of what the team in basketball is even going to look like, right? Everybody, they're going to be wore out by halfway through the first quarter trying to run up and down the court as fast as all that, right? So that's the idea, right? Is how diverse is my team, not in the scope of just saying, we have a diverse team, but how are we embracing and celebrating that diversity, and how is each person, do they have the space that's safe and also brave to come fully as themselves to say, here's my idea. I want to bring this to the table without being scoffed at or like, well, that was stupid, or we've always done it this way, right? We need someone that's going to come in sometimes and kind of shake it up a little bit and say, why have you been doing it this way for this long? You came into Culture of Good, George, to a point, and you said, Ryan, we've done a good job at Culture of Good, or you've done a good job at building a brand, and we need to really build the business side of it and grow that component because people knowing about what we offer and actually engaging with the business are two different things. And so you were a culture enhancement, right? Sure, there's similarities. Yes. We vibe. Yes. We've got chemistry. Yes. You love me as a brother. I love you as a brother, all of those things. But also there's pushback, right? There's let's do this differently. Let's challenge this. Let's kind of shake the boat up a little bit and see if maybe we've just been doing things the way we've been doing them because that's just the way we've always done them.
It's so important to understand, what you're saying is that we're talking about roles, right? Everybody has a role and a purpose. Whenever I think role, I think purpose. So, I always say, what is my purpose on this team, right? How do I bring value to this team, and in what area? I understand my job description. I understand the job title, and you and I both, we talk about job titles all the time. They're obsolete. They really don't mean anything except for the person on paper and for the title, what door opportunity it may open up for you, because a title means something, right? If I say, hey, I'm a janitor, I'm not going to be able to go meet with another CEO. But if I say I'm a CEO, all of a sudden it looks like it's a little bit more meaningful. And so titles are nothing, right? My mom, my mom, that movie, my mom named me George, so I'm going to call him George. Understanding your roles at the end of the day. And when I say roles, remember, role is purpose, understanding my purpose. How do I bring value to this organization, to this company? And as we talk about the culture add, right, and while we use that word culture enhance, culture fit, when we say those words, what we truly mean behind that is, what is it that I do so well that is going to bring a value, that's going to elevate, empower others and this organization to do good, right? To not only do good from a sales standpoint, which everybody's in business to make money, right? We do what we do every day to make money. But for you and I, we do what we do every day to make money because we're passionate about what we actually do, right? And so how do we allow our passion to then be a part of the empowerment of our role, AKA our purpose, to this thing? And so how do we bring purpose into this? How do we add value to this? It's really saying, George, this is what we need you to do. This is what we want you to do, but this is why we want you to do it, right? So we talk about the what and the why all the time, Ryan. And I don't want to get too far off the subject matter here, or too far deep on what the culture ad is. But I do want to say this: when we talk about culture ad, and we talked a little bit last week about the diversity aspects of that and how this all ties together, right? Bringing somebody in that's going to add to your culture means they're going to bring new clientele, right? They're going to bring new customers. They're going to be able to speak the language and or connect with those people. You open up their range to say, hey, there's somebody that works with such business that looks like me, that I can understand, that may be able to understand me on that level. I think as a growing organization, when we talk about companies and we see them, Ryan, we work with the good, bad, and ugly in some organizations. The organizations that are thriving and really doing well are thriving because of leadership. They are thriving because there's a culture add atmosphere there where they're allowing their employees and their team members to bring their soul to work, to be them. They have the why aligned with what they're doing, and there's a sense of purpose and a sense of belonging, a sense of connection. And when that happens, man, it really explodes. It really explodes. And so I say all that to say, how can you help new hires succeed? Right. When we talk about the culture, let's talk about the succession part. Like in the first 90 days of a job, what are the things that we could do to really allow the new hires, as they're onboarding, getting acquainted with the organization, the honeymoon phase in the first 30 days turns into the actual job phase in the next 60 days. And then why in the hell do I want to stay with this company? Right. Those are the 30-day tiers for me. Like, oh, this is new hire. Everybody's me. And then after 30 days, 30 to 60 days, it's like, this is really who the company is. And then the last 30 days in those 90 days, do I want to stay here?
Well, also the company's finding out exactly who you are, right? I always tell people when they're dating, you don't really meet the real person until you don't get to know the real person on the first few dates, right? The real person's at home locked up in a cage. And the person you're dating,
the real person's at home after the date, and they're washing their face and their makeup or taking off their shirt.
So
whatever.
So that's the thing, right? Yeah, and I want to take a segment break real quick, and when we come back, we're going to be talking about the idea of exactly what you're saying, and how in the first 90 days we can actually do a stay interview rather than just doing exit interviews, finding out that we're losing a lot of diverse, different talent. And so, George, we do have a segment, and then we'll get back to answering that question that you had. And the segment, and this is the third week in a row, we got to come up with a new one next week, but the segment is the craziest shit in HR.
All right, so the title of this one here, Ryan, is "The Drugs Just Blew Into My Mouth Accidentally." So this HR rep said, I used to work at a staffing agency that placed people in manufacturing positions. Everyone had to be drug tested at the office as part of the orientation. If the P cup came back as inconclusive, we would send the potential hire to a medical lab. They would take another drug test, and the lab would determine if the person was on prescription or using illegal drugs and therefore not eligible for hire. So one guy failed his drug test at the lab. He came back to the office claiming that it wasn't his fault. He explained that he was riding in a car, right? He wasn't driving, ladies and gentlemen. He wasn't driving. He was riding in a car, and he stuck his head out of the window. And then suddenly, when the car passed under a bridge, someone at the top of the bridge threw a bunch of cocaine off the bridge, and it hit him in the face, and he accidentally inhaled it. Ladies and gentlemen, that's the first segment.
And that, my friends, is the craziest shit in HR for this week, for sure. And I'm telling you, if you're having a really bad day and that happens, your day gets worse, but at first it feels really cool. Have you seen the new movie coming out, Cocaine Bear?
I have not, but I'm sure that guy.
You haven't? Oh God, that looks like it's going to be the most amazing. I know it sounds ridiculous, but a bear actually got into cocaine, and that was dropped out of a plane and went on a binge. But anyway, thanks for. Yes, Kenneth, happens all the time, doesn't it? Just random cocaine flying off of bridges. And so we just give everybody out there, all the HR people, we're sending y'all some love too. And yes. We know this is a fun ride, much like an adventure. But we've got a few minutes here, and when we think about the first 90 days, the first thing I want to say though, before we get into this, George, one of the easiest ways to really discover whether you're hiring for culture is a force or an enhancement, or if we want to use the word fit and add, is are differences looked at as a problem, or are they looked at as an opportunity? That's it. So when we think about differences, and this isn't just from a recruiter standpoint. So I'm not just talking about recruiting. I'm talking about the team that the person is getting hired onto. Because when we say culture fit over and over and over, it means something different to everybody. And if we don't teach what that is, if someone's different and they bring differences to the team might say, well, they're not a culture fit. See? Mm-hmm. So we have to be really cautious about that. Now, when I think about the first 90 days, one thing that I saw that's being implemented at Stash Ventures, it's a cannabis company. And we had Nicole on months ago now. And what they do is after the first like 60 days, they do a stay interview, right? So instead of an exit interview, you interview them as to why they're staying, right? What do they love about the culture? You know, when you're hiring for a culture enhancement or culture add, you're asking them their impression of the culture in the business. What's your impression of the culture? What's your impression of the values? What's your impression of our mission and our purpose, right? Because that's where you're wanting to see there's a connection. That's when, you know, we talk about culture fit. We want that connection. But in terms of a culture add, once those differences start to come out, once we realize that, we want to see that they're fully showing up as themselves. And I'll tell you, one of the biggest ways to keep people connected as a culture enhancer and a culture add long-term is that very thing, is ensuring that we're interviewing and connecting and actually talking through that with the employees rather than just waiting until someone's ready to exit. Once someone's ready to exit, it's too late, you know? What we want to find out, why are people staying, and we want to really build on that and grow that understanding. And you know, one of the biggest things I learned that lately in studies that employees are looking for, potential hires are looking for, is the freedom of creative expression. To be able to express myself, to have the freedom of being myself, to fully show up. George, is what we talk about all the time. Bring your soul to work. We can't bring our soul to work and differences be an issue, right? To be a problem. So I'm seeing that when we think about the 90-day process, sitting down with employees, interviewing them around, again, why are they staying? What do they love about the culture? What do they feel that they can add to the culture? Where do they see that their differences can enhance the team, right? When we talk to the team and the team says, well, Joe or Sally, they're not a culture fit, identify what differences are there and look for ways, asking the team, well, how can they enhance the team then, right? So we're looking for those culture enhancements, and we're identifying that so that we can have a long-term projection of, okay, this is why you want to stay, and here's how I can support you, or how can I support you, you know, over the next 6 months or whatever. Once you have that 60-day interview, how can I support you in the next 6 months for your growth, your development, right? And really speaking to the desire of that employee to actually stay. What are we hiring people to? What kind of culture are we hiring them into? And then what kind of culture, what kind of team are we asking them to stay a part of? One that they just fit in with, or one that they enhance? People are looking for teams. And if you're wanting to hire a bunch of 1s and 2s and 3s and 4s and 5s, that's different than hiring 7, 8s, 9s, and 10s. 7, 8, 9s, and 10s are different. They're opinionated many times. Sometimes they don't voice their opinion, but they have opinions. They have different experiences, and they can bring a lot of enhancement to a team. But many times we're goofing off with a bunch of 4 and 5 leaders, or, you know, employees and team members on our team. And sometimes that's why that person is not a culture fit, is because they have different expectations, right? So how can you support them in their expectations? How can you support them as they fully show up and enhance the team and enhance the organization, you know?
Yeah, that's really good, Ron. I think that's a reflection of leadership, man. That's, you know, when it comes to that 90 days and then that growth, process, what's the growth strategy for that individual? I think is important. I think it says a lot about leadership. And I think that's a challenge for us as leaders, is that how well do we know our team? This is that first 90 days is really courting. As much as it is training systems and processes within the organization, you should also be training relationship strategies. How do we develop in that leadership portion of it? And that's something that you and I, we're having an opportunity now, something that we didn't necessarily have on the table, 6 or 7 months ago. But, as we're bringing in and certifying culture champions, what we're seeing is that we also need to certify leaders, right? And creating those leadership development strategies across the organization. And part of what we're doing with that, with Culture of Good, again, our sponsor for this podcast, Champion Your Culture, sponsored by Culture Good. Some of the things that we're being able to do and partner with Culture Good and other organizations is developing those leadership development strategies. And part of that is, hey, how do we as leaders connect with our employees so that we can take employee engagement to another level, which we believe is employee fulfillment? How do they feel fulfilled in their purpose? And that's really starting with the leadership and getting to know their team, getting to know their languages, what frustrates them, what bothers them, how do they react when they're dealing with stress in the workplace? That's all a part of that relationship and defining relationship that you should have as a leader. And when it comes to those things, Ryan.
Yeah, I was just talking to an employee in a company the other day, and we do a lot of SWOT and analysis and go in and observe and have dialogue with different levels of leaders and so forth. And this employee was going to leave the company because they had more to offer, but were not given the opportunity to contribute. And it wasn't, they weren't trying to contribute outside of the scope of the work. They could literally make the team better, but their leader, their boss, or as I like to call it, their bully, didn't give them the space to even have a voice, And so here's this company about to lose somebody, and it's because we over time, if we're going to feel fulfilled, we want to know that our contribution matters. It's what you said. It's your role as your purpose, right? Your purpose within the organization. Does that purpose even matter? Am I contributing meaningfully? It's a question I think that we can ask from the very beginning, from hiring all the way through. We need to ask ourselves this question: is our differences a problem, or are they an opportunity, right? How do we see those? And that's the team that the individual is going to be working on, the new hire, all of those things. The question that we need to be asking that new hire is, how do they personally enhance or benefit a team, right? When they're working with their peers, how do they enhance that team? How do they benefit the team, right? So let's end with that, George. I'm gonna put you on the spot, George. Say I'm recruiting you and you're a potential new hire, and the recruiting process looks pretty similar. You've been through a couple rounds, or I don't know. So I've been reading recruiting hell on Reddit, man. And some of these companies are putting people through like 15 interviews and like sitting in front of like panels of people. I'm just like, y'all are over the top about it. But say I'm hiring you, George, and this is the end of our interview, and I just asked, George, how do you personally benefit a team when working with your peers?
How do I personally benefit with a team and working with my peers?
How do you benefit the team? How do you benefit the team? Yeah, how do you personally benefit, but how do you personally benefit the team, right, when you work with them?
I think it's I think for me, it's inclusive, right? It's unity, it's communication, effectiveness, and bringing alignment with everybody.
So you're an aligner.
Yeah. I think when it comes to me, one thing, whenever there's a team involvement, I tend to go introvert, right? I want to know everybody's voice, because for so long, I didn't know my voice matters. So my intent purpose now on team is to make sure everybody has a voice. And then how does that align with the work that we're doing? Like where does it make sense for all these different voices coming together, and put some thought behind that?
Yeah, that's good, man. So I got a lot out of that answer. I got that you are a self-aware person. I got that you are empathetic. I caught a lot more than your answer. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I got to hear what you really bring to a team is empathy, is leadership, is listening. That's powerful. But the problem is, what if I have a team of a bunch of people that just are real loud and boisterous? When I bring you into that team, you may not look like a culture fit. See?
Yeah.
But how important is it for there to be other people on the team that actually listen if everybody likes to talk?
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. You would enhance a team,
Right.
but that's what we're hiring for. So
Yeah.
I just want to encourage everybody out there. You're out there. I know the recruiting, retainment world, HR space, for those that are in the process of wanting to build your team, don't just build bigger, build better, build for enhancement, build for add. Not just does this person fit into everybody else's personalities, right?
Yeah.
That kind of deal. Really ask the question, how will this person enhance his team? And then really finding out, how is that person? How do they see themselves enhancing a team before you hire them? Listen, Thank you all for jumping on Champion Your Culture this week. George, do you have anything else, man?
No, I just want to say again, thanks to everybody for joining us on Champion Your Culture, sponsored by Culture of Good. As always, Ryan, it's a great conversation, and I can't wait for next week and the week after that. So we got some guests coming in, and in the next month or so. So I'm excited about that. And then I believe I'm going to see you in a few weeks, man. I'm going to be in Indy in March, so I'm looking forward to that as well. And so got some exciting things coming up
here together.
Yeah, got some exciting things coming up. So I'm excited about that. And as always, everybody, you can visit www.cultureofgood.com. Once again, cultureofgood.com. You can find everything that Ryan and I do. You can find links to our podcast. If you're looking for leadership development, we do that as well. Executive leadership coaching. Or if you're looking for keynote speakers, you can get Ryan and I co-keynotes. Get the 2-for-1 package. This keynote I'm excited about. With Ryan is you're going to get the best of both worlds, from all things leadership to culture, and how the leadership involves and empowers how to bring your soul to work with employee engagement fulfillment, all the way to D&I and what the trends are. We're partnering with Lighthouse Research and Advisory when it comes to the recent data and trends that we're seeing there. And next week, I'll have some of that data as well, Ryan. There's a lot of great stuff as far as the talent side of things, talent acquisitions, and what we're seeing there with Ben Eubanks and that team. And so I'm excited about that. But yeah, everybody join us next week as we come back to you on this lovely podcast. And as always, we appreciate everybody. Ryan, I appreciate you, my brother. Have a good week.
All right, bro. Love you, man.
All right.
As always.
Until next time on Champion Your Culture.